The Dustin Daniels Show. Unashamedly proclaiming God's purity through His Son, Jesus Christ. Devoted to saving marriages. Dedicated to protecting children. Addressing sex with biblical truth and without shock value. You're listening to the intersection of life and lust. Call toll-free at 1-855-5-DUSTIN. And now, here's your host, Purity Pastor Dustin Daniels.
The First Amendment of the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And that means that the First Amendment forbids Congress from both promoting one religion over others and also restricting a person's religious practices. It guarantees freedom of expression by prohibiting Congress from restricting the press or the rights of the people to speak freely. Well, welcome to the show. My name is Dustin Daniels. I am your host, and we're going to take a break today from our series titled The Exodus, a journey from the desert to the promised land. And instead, we're going to discuss one of the most pressing issues in the life of the church and our culture today. And that is your free speech. Your constitutional and God-given right to believe that God is the creator of the universe. The right to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. The right to believe that the Holy Spirit lives inside of you and He changes you to look and behave more like Jesus over time. The right to believe that there is ultimate truth that comes from the ultimate lawgiver, and His name is God. The right to believe that there is this thing called sin, and that sin has separated all of mankind from God. But you know what? Our culture and a lot of our churches don't like to talk about sin. In fact, sin is barely even acknowledged anymore. But even though the world, and even though the government, and even though your neighbors may scoff and they may laugh at your beliefs as a Bible-believing Christian, does that give them the right to silence you? Well, the LGBT thinks it does. We have this movement in America called the homosexual agenda. And it has a few beliefs of its own. And make no doubt about it, the homosexual agenda, man, it's powerful. They've got lots of money and they've got lots of attorneys. In fact, it's so powerful that the Supreme Court of the United States of America stepped outside the Constitution to legalize same-sex marriage back in June of this year. So what does that mean for you and your beliefs as a Christian? Well, filmmaker Darren Doan knows what this means. He is the director of the groundbreaking documentary titled Collision, along with the box office smash hit Unstoppable with Kirk Cameron. Darren returns now with his most bold, uncensored, and provocative film to date, and it is titled The Free Speech Apocalypse. The Free Speech Apocalypse exposes the strategies of the anti-God, the anti-traditional, the hyper-liberal elite, and offers perspective on the decay of our culture when it comes to homosexuality. Darren, welcome to the Dustin Daniels Show.
Man, it's great to be here. I mean, when you sit and listen to an intro on the radio, I mean, and you're on it, your heart just starts going. Like, you guys are so used to doing this, and I've only done a few of these just because as of late I've been sort of the main one representing the these projects right
Sure.
now. I'm used to everyone else doing the PR. I'm used to Kirk Cameron doing the PR. I'm used to Doug Wilson doing it. And it's like, and then you get here and your heart just starts to race. I'm like, how do people call into the radio and sound so calm? I mean, I'm just like, one, I'm just fired up. I'm like, yeah, exactly what he just said. But I don't even know where to go with it. I'm just fired up.
Well, I tell you what, Darren, I'm fired up too because your agent sent me a preview link to watch this movie online to prep for this interview. And man, oh man, all I've got to say is like, wow. Just wow. We have a problem with free speech in our country as Bible-believing Christians, and it's disguised as sexual rights and sexual freedom. So can you give us a little background on the premise of this movie? You've got this pastor by the name of Doug Wilson, and he's trying to give a lecture at Indiana University. This happened back in 2012. What happened during that lecture?
Well, he was actually, in the film he talks about it. His wife was invited to go speak at a women's group, and he was traveling with her. And then the church out there said, "Well, Doug, if you're going to be out here, I mean, we'll just pick up a freebie. Why don't you come and speak?
Sure.
And so which is funny because when you see the movie, it's interesting to kind of think in terms that like somewhere like 1 mile away, his wife is giving like a conference to like a bunch of women somewhere, and
Right.
they're just having a good time, relaxing, and then over here people are yelling and screaming. But yeah, so he took the opportunity to work with a college outreach group. He chose to do a talk on sexuality, and then it was like lo and behold, like right there at Indiana University was the Kinsey Institute, and which has the largest collection of pornography, I believe, in the world. And right there, good old American Indiana University,
in the heartland, right?
In the heartland, which I think says so much. And so he gave a talk, and what's fascinating is this was 3 years ago. Doug gave this talk 3 years ago. And this is a very Doug Wilson type thing because I remember 3 years ago, people were saying to Doug when he went and gave this talk, and the students showed up and they were all upset. How dare you say that sexuality has been designed by God and how we interact, is God ordained and all this stuff. And I remember people saying to Doug, "Why would you go and do this? Like, why would you pick this fight?
Wow.
This is 2012, right? Like, Doug, you're just such a troublemaker." And it's like, look where we're at 3 years later.
Absolutely. I was amazed, Darren, that at the very beginning of your movie, you show students actually putting on makeup that looked like bruises.
Right.
Why were they doing that?
Well, because they wanted to show that words have consequences and they can hurt. So but they're internal bruises. So by showing up with bruises on their faces and their arms, they were able to externalize the internal pain that the Christian worldview was causing them. And so what ultimately that they are doing is they are using victimhood. They are using being a victim, but they're using it as a fist to punch back at what they think needs to be attacked, but they use it under the guise of victimhood. We are victims, we are hurt, we are offended, and now we're going to string you up and kill you.
Pastor Doug knew going in that his traditional, biblically based values on marriage were going to be challenged during this lecture.
Yeah, but that didn't happen until really kind of maybe about a week or so before. It had been planned, and then all of a sudden we kept getting reports back. The church kept getting reports back like, hey, like there's kind of a movement happening to kind of protest. So, it had already been planned, but then sort of this sort of build up, and kind of last minute, it was, like, hey, let's get some cameras out there. Let's document this, especially if something just goes wrong. It'd be good to have some, footage of it, if something horrible, happened. And so, I don't think we knew that it was going to be this explosive. I think we just thought, hey, like, let's just go document this. This could be really interesting. If it's getting that many college students that fired up, maybe this could be worth documenting. And so it had already been set. It wasn't like, we set this up to get a rise out of people,
right.
by no means. But again, I mean, go to a college university and have a talk on, sexual by design and that God has a particular way in which he wants us to live. And I don't think anyone would be surprised that college students would be really upset.
My guest today is Darren Doan. He has a brand new movie. It's called The Free Speech Apocalypse. And Darren, inside this movie, it seems to me there's this huge disconnect regarding words and the word of diversity and the word of tolerance.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, it's really interesting, and I'm a layman. I mean, I'm a pretty garden variety guy. When it comes to theology, the Bible, philosophy. I mean, I love all this stuff, but you got to break it down for me, And the reason why I love doing projects like this is that I get an excuse to have to learn a little bit more about something and to go deeper into it. And one of the things that I learned, and I knew a lot of this just from kind of traditional apologetics. When I became a Christian, I was in the film industry. I got beat up on day one. It was just like, what do you mean you can't trust the Bible? You can't do this. Every apologetic nightmare happens to you on day one, especially if you're in the entertainment industry.
It's so encouraging, isn't it?
Yes. We liked you so much better yesterday.
Right.
And one of the things that I knew, but I didn't know the sort of power of it, was sort of traditional apologetics, sort of street apologetics, helps you understand that there are some things, like when someone says, you're not being tolerant, right? And then sort of street apologetics teaches you, well, wait a minute, what does tolerance mean, right? And when you think about it for a moment, I don't have to tolerate chocolate chip ice cream. I love chocolate chip ice cream. I don't have to tolerate it, I do have to tolerate anything with like black cherry. Right? When someone pulls out the black cherry ice cream with figs, I'm like, now I'll eat it, but I'm tolerating it because I actually don't like it. But I'm being respectful. I'm not screaming at the person that brought me, the black cherry ice cream. Like I'm not, I tolerate it. So you can only tolerate something that you don't agree with or dislike. That's what the word tolerance has meant forever. You can just stop for a moment and say, wait a minute. So the way you're using tolerance is totally different.
Right.
Right. You're saying that tolerance means I have to accept, embrace, and love this thing. So now you can do that on the street, and it's kind of like, okay, it kind of gets you off the hook, and it's kind of a gotcha. But there's something deeper going on, and that's what took me, years as a Christian to begin to understand that there is a war for words. And once you take over the words and you can redefine words in a culture, then you can begin to advance the next part of a battle. And the left has co-opted almost every word, and they've redefined it to where even God-loving, Bible-believing Christians are so confused because who doesn't want to be tolerant? Who doesn't want to be loving?
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
And they've also defined attributes as far as who doesn't want to be accepting. And so because they've taken all those words, they've hijacked those words, they've given them new meaning, Christians are really, really confused. And so it turns out that words are way more political, have way bigger of an impact than I believe I ever thought. And it turns out that words, how people use them, there's nothing neutral about it. People use words to get a particular thing from people, whether it's an admission of guilt, whether it's sympathy, so it's really, really powerful. And then sitting back and making this film, even more so, it was like, oh my goodness, they've taken the words, and now that they've taken the words, they're running the place. So it's sort of like they've marked out the field, and all the rules, though, because they've changed the words, only benefit them. And as soon as Christians try to use those words, they can't play the game, and that's why I think a lot of Christians are stuck, and they don't know how to communicate in the culture right now.
Absolutely. I noticed that Pastor Doug was speaking, that they were yelling and screaming, and they were shouting him down rather than trying to have a conversation. We're going to talk more about that when we return with Darren Doan and his brand new movie, The Free Speech Apocalypse, and it opens this weekend at Harkins Theaters at Arizona Mills 25 in Tempe. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Dustin Daniels Show.
Do you want to know more about the Bible? If you teach a Bible study and want to be more effective, or you just want to learn for your own personal discipleship, then the Certificate of Bible Teaching program may be for you. Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary, one of the 10 largest seminaries in the world, offers classes in North Phoenix designed to give students greater insight into the content and message of the Bible. Students also learn ways of presenting the Bible more effectively in Bible studies, Sunday school, home groups, or personal discipleship. In North Phoenix, classes meet at I-17 and Cactus Road. Other certificate, diploma, and degree programs are available in North Phoenix and in Scottsdale at the seminary's Arizona campus, located on Hayden Road. Call today for more information. 480-941-1993. That's area code 480-941-1993. Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary, shaping leaders who expand God's kingdom around the world.
The Dustin Daniels Show is a listener-supported program and is an outreach ministry of 7 Places. Pastor Dustin's mission is to connect you and your church to the power of purity by teaching, training, preaching, and proclaiming Christ-centered purity through this radio ministry. To give your best gift today, text 7 Places to the number 77977 or visit our website at DustinDanielsRadio.com. Now, back to the program with Pastor Dustin.
My guest today is Darren Doan, filmmaker. Brand new film that starts this weekend at Harkins Theater's Arizona Mills 25. And it's called The Free Speech Apocalypse. And we're talking about the war on words and what words really, really mean, especially when it comes to the homosexual agenda. And Darren, one thing that caught me when I was watching this movie was, you know, the government has joined this movement. They're shutting down small businesses like floral shops and photographers and wedding cake bakers and screen printing companies, and they're refusing to take part. These guys have a biblical worldview. They believe in one man and one woman to glorify God in this covenant called marriage, and they won't participate in a same-sex marriage. And the government now is shutting these businesses down. What is going on?
You know, I heard you say in your intro that you guys have been going through Exodus.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Right. And so, you know, I really believe that the world only goes in one direction, and the problems that we have only go in a particular direction. So anything we're seeing, we've seen this before, and I think that's one of the, you know, multifaceted, you know, strength that the Bible gives us is to see situations, to be able to study them, and to kind of maybe have a take on where we are at. And so again, I'm a garden variety Christian. I'm kind of just right there, you know. So I depend on people like you to like pull out the Bible verses and chapter verse it. So I'll let other people kind of chapter verse this and footnote this. But if you look at Exodus, right, you've got people brought into a land, and everything is good. It's good again, and everything's fine, and everything's going well. And there's a verse somewhere that talks about that, but eventually it appears as though that the people of God somehow began to compromise, and something happens. Combo that with you now have a Pharaoh who doesn't seem to remember what the history is anymore or what the relationships are. And so ultimately what you have now is a new God that comes in, and people are obviously serving a particular new God. And I think America is very much like that right now. And so and I think this sort of Exodus motif is very applicable to what we are seeing right now. Because what is happening right now is Christians have been lulled into this idea of a separation between church and state, and more profound, a separation of heaven and earth. And with that separation came this idea that, you know what, my faith is between me and God, and it's personal, and that's kind of what it is. I'm not going to walk into the city council meeting and push my faith.
Right.
Okay. And so what I think ended up happening And I know this because I saw this, and I've seen this in my own Christian life. So this isn't just a historical look back. I'll let other people do that, But I think sometimes we forget. We live in this world. We live in history. So I know what it's like to become a Christian and go through a particular time in my life where I'm like, I'm not going to push my views on people. I'm not going to, my goodness, who am I to push my view in this city? I mean, the city was here before me, and I'm just going to walk into a city council meeting and tell them that I think so. My faith is going to be personal. It's going to be about me and Jesus, and maybe if I get a chance to talk to the city council guy down at coffee, I'll be able to maybe influence them. And so I know what it's like to live that way, and so I know other people are living that way as well. America has lived that way, and all of a sudden, within that time, a new system is coming in place because there always has to be a God in control. There has to always be a God in control. And the way God designed the world, it never goes away. So people mock and laugh at, oh, you Christians, you believe in the Old Testament and, blasphemy laws. Oh, so you just want to bring blasphemy laws back, huh? If your child talks back to you, yeah, you just want to kill them. Oh, you Christians in the Old Testament, and they laugh and they mock and, and we go, oh gosh, yeah, I never really thought about that. Maybe I should just keep my mouth shut. And all of a sudden, they show up and say, hey, by the way, we have this thing called hate speech. And you're like, oh, that sounds like a bad thing. And if you commit hate speech, you're going to be fined. You're going to be imprisoned. You're like, oh, wow, wait a minute. Isn't that blasphemy laws? And so it turns out that God's structure for the whole world never goes anywhere. There's always blasphemy laws. And so the left right now in America has assumed power, and the God that they are serving right now is a very particular God, and that God that they are serving has particular laws that they've set in place, and those laws include their version of diversity, their laws of hate speech, which is just a form of blasphemy. And if you break these laws, if you go against the God of this age, you will be punished. And so that's what we are seeing. And my hope is that Christians see this film and realize, wow, there is no neutrality. Government, civil institutions don't just fall from the sky. They're made up of people. And people are what Jesus put in front of us to love and to bring from, darkness to light. And when you do that, then the entire world changes. So, yes, it's a spiritual transformation, but all spiritual transformations affect physical things. People are physical beings. We're spiritual, and we're changed spiritually, but when you change human beings, then you change the whole world.
My guest today is Darren Doan. He has a brand new film. It's called The Free Speech Apocalypse, and you can see it here in Phoenix at the Harkins Theater, Arizona Mills 25. You can also go to thefreespeechapocalypse.com and purchase that and download it. And I would suggest that you do that today and to get a small group and discuss what is happening to our Christian faith. Darren, thank you so much for joining us. Let's remember that we've done a lot of talking today. And the kingdom of God isn't just a lot of talk. It's living and living in God's power.
The Dustin Daniels Radio Show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subject matter covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the host nor the station is engaged in rendering counseling advice for your personal situation. If you need further help, we encourage you to seek the services of a Christ-based counseling professional. For more information on the radio show, visit DustinDanielsRadio.com.